Welcome once again to Fantasy Fiction Focus. Our guest today is Jayne Barnard. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Simon, and you?
Yes, not too bad. Now, you're in BC, I think, at the moment. You're from Calgary, but right now you're in BC, I think, aren't you?
I am. I'm in beautiful, almost downtown Comox, BC, which is a lovely small town. The whole Comox Valley has about 40,000 people. And so you can imagine that traffic and store lineups and all of those other things that we take for granted in Calgary are just a lot more relaxed out here. It's a great place to spend a winter writing.
Yeah, I was going to say that. It sounds like a wonderful place to write. Now, you, of course, are the author of Maddie Hatter and the Deadly Diamond, which we're going to cover in some detail in this little chat. But first off, I just wanted to mention, for the benefits of other people, this is in the steampunk genre. Now, I know what that is, and obviously you do too, but some people might not. What is the steampunk genre?
Well, the steampunk genre is most easily explained as an alternate, slightly altered Victorian era. If you read the works of Jules Verne or H.G. Wells or the Professor Challenger series by Arthur Conan Doyle, those are considered the forerunners of modern steampunk. They are set in Victorian times. They're slightly fantastical. They go fascinating places. They do cooler things. The technology might be a little bit more outlandish. Certainly, H.G. Wells' Time Machine was a bit outlandish for real Victorian era. So there's been a revival, I would say, in the last 20 years in that kind of fantastical adventure story, which is at the heart of steampunk. Because the Victorian era was rich in politics, and it was also rich in exploration and rich in developments in the fashion industry, which particularly interests me, frankly. A lot of modern steampunks focus on the clothing and accessories. And I brought some along to show you today, if you don't mind. This is my cute little...
Oh, it'd be good to see some of that stuff. As I do see people in these costumes and things when I go to comic expos and conventions and things like that. So yeah, what have you got there?
Well, one of the basics of steampunk is clockworks, and I have a nice little pocket watch here. I don't know if I can hold it still enough for the camera to get it. Very ladylike with roses and so on, but it's a working pocket watch. Miniature telescope that actually has magnifying lenses in it for spying things out. And I have, of course, lace gloves, short fingerless gloves for day wear, and a very long, elegant evening gloves, also fingerless, for evening wear. And I have my lovely little steampunk hat, which some of the people who came to my launch for Maddie Hatter at Owl's Nest in Calgary will recognize. How's that?
Look at that. You look like you've just traveled forward in time.
Or backward or somewhere. But yes. Steampunk is very much about, modern steampunk is very much about the costumes. And it's a lot of fun to play dress up. Oh, one more little thing here. And the fan. You can flirt excessively with handsome gentlemen with a fan.
Good Lord. So now, so I suppose you better tell us a little bit about this wonderful adventure you've set in this fascinating era. Maddie Hatter and the Deadly Diamond. I mean, tell us all about it. Maddie
Hatter is an 1890s young woman born in London, in an alternate London, and after running away from home in the middle of her own debutante ball to avoid a forced marriage with a young man of good family, she set out to make her living as a fashion reporter. She can't get a job in England because her family would be embarrassed. And this is actually quite historically accurate for England. In the Victorian era, there was a lot of emphasis on men, middle class and up, being the sole support of their family. It was a sign of manhood is how well you support your family. And women for a long time were kept out of the workforce, even if they were fully qualified, because to have a woman in your family working was considered a slur on your ability to support your family. So Maddies made a deal with her father, who's a very powerful steam lord, that she won't work in England and she will avoid being recognized by anyone who knows her family. But since she's a fashion reporter, and where would you find all the high-class fashions? You find that with the high-class people. Nobody wants to read about what the clerks at the local grocery store are wearing. They want to read about, in modern terms, Kim Kardashian or Angelina Jolie and who's wearing what on the red carpet. Well, that attitude was pretty common in Victorian times too, and the fashion columns in all the local newspapers were full of Lady So-and-so's beautiful sleeves and the Honorable Miss Such-and-Such's gorgeous hat. So this is ostensibly what Maddie has to cover, but she can't do it in England. So in Maddie Hatter and the Deadly Diamond, she has just spent the winter in Cairo at Shepherd's English Hotel, where well-heeled British tourists would flock to escape the rain and cloud of miserable British winters and spend it in the warmth and sunshine of Egypt, exploring the pyramids and cruising up the Nile on luxurious riverboats. And there's plenty of sleeves and hats and goggles and cravats that she can write about and send home to England and get paid, which is always nice for writing.
But of course, I'm sure that she's not just doing that. I mean, is there a mystery involved? Is there a crime or something? Something must happen, right?
Yes, and something has happened to Maddie. She was in the right place, the right time, I'll say last Christmas in story time. Last Christmas, she was really trying hard to break out of the fashion pages and interest her editor in a story about an eccentric English adventurer who was setting off in his specially prepared expeditionary airship to an uncharted oasis in the Nubian desert on a quest for a mask which held as a third eye in the middle of its forehead a diamond that was reputed to glow red when touched by an evil man. And that in itself, of course, that's the deadly diamond of the title. But the Baron didn't come back, which is, of course, not uncommon for adventurers going into uncharted deserts with untested equipment. You know, it happens a lot. In this particular case, though, when Maddie's sitting there, it's nearly Easter, she's in Cairo, the season there is winding down, she learns that the Baron's airship, which was supposed to be coming back from the desert any day now, has turned up on the coast of Cornwall, England, thousands of miles away, and it's deserted. Not only is there no sign of the diamond, there's no sign of the Baron. So now, all of a sudden, after telling her no, no, no all winter, her editor wants to know what the Baron was doing in Cairo before he left, because now he can sell anything that mentions this Baron. Maddie,
I don't think you should tell us any more, though. No one's going to buy the book. Good heavens!
All chapter 1 so far.
Oh, don't tell us any more. That's fascinating stuff. Now, I would imagine, just because from what you've told me about the character, and she's been to Egypt in this wonderful time period, the Sherlock Holmesy type time period, and the British Empire and everything else, the run up to World War I, and marvelous time. There must be other adventures planned for this young lady.
There definitely are other adventures. She ends up in New York City, and I don't know if you're not a steampunk, but one of the sports in steampunk that originated in Calgary is parasol dueling. Literally, ladies get their parasols out and they duel. They have matches and competitions. There'll be a regional competition at Calgary Comic and Entertainment Expo next spring. And in New York City, Maddie Hatter's there looking at parasol duelists as they do it in New York City in 1899. So that's where she's going next, and I'm not going to tell you anything about what happens there, but it's very fun and adventurous, and there's some danger. And following that, she's going to Venice for Carnival.
Well, why not? Another great setting. I mean, I would imagine that at some point she'll be able to go to Paris, she'll be able to go to Berlin, she might get involved in the Russian Revolution. Good heavens. Now, is this have you always been interested in this, well, historical fiction in general? Is that something that's always interested you? Are you a history buff, or just about this particular era and the steampunk variant of it?
I have always been a history buff. And I've read historical fiction from pretty much every era, dating back to early Egypt, all the way through to World War I and World War II. But I did read an awful lot of crime fiction set in the Victorian era. You know, Sherlock Holmes is the quintessential Victorian detective, and I wouldn't say that I was inspired to write crime fiction because of Sherlock Holmes necessarily, but that milieu provides, because it was a time of tremendous upheaval, social upheaval, as well as physical change, geographical change, industrial change, imperial change. Russia and Queen Victoria were duking it out all over the world, very politely navigating for territory and riches.
Yeah, so, well, yeah, there are some time periods that are more popular. I was talking this to somebody the other day. I mean, obviously, you know, the Napoleonic era is very popular, medieval, World War I, this sort of thing. So, and this is certainly taking people's, grab people's attention with the whole, steampunk thing. And you've got an awful lot of scope for more adventures once you've established this wonderful character. Now, you do have a sequel coming out, I think, but I'm not sure when it's coming to this adventure. When is her next adventure coming out? Do we know?
The next book is coming out a year from next month, essentially.
All right, so we've got to wait. Oh my goodness!
Yes.
Can your readers wait that long? Can they wait that long?
Well, we do have some things planned to keep them entertained. The audiobook will be out this summer. And there will be a short story released next fall that will explore peripheral characters from Maddie Hatter and the Deadly Diamond moving through Maddie's world.
All right, so something to keep so people don't have to wait for too long. That's a good thing. Yes. Now you've done other writing as well as this. I mean, you're not just fresh into the writing. This isn't the first thing you've ever written, is it?
No, I was quite surprised when I thought about it. Before the launch of Maddie Hatter, when I was preparing my notes, I looked back at my life and realized that I won my first writing award 25 years before Maddie Hatter came out, for a short story, a short children's story called Princess Alex and the Dragon Deal. It won the Saskatchewan Writers Guild Award for Children's Literature. And every magazine I sent it to that accepted it went under before it saw print. So after the third time, I thought that might be an omen and I'd better not send it to any more magazines. So it has, in fact, never been published, but it did win me a Saskatchewan Writers Guild Award. Well,
it's got you started, and you've done other things as well, and everything, I suppose. And I have to ask, I suppose, about this. We should point out this is a young adult book, not an adult book. It's a young adult book for, I suppose, early teens, right?
It is, although its second most popular readership so far is women over 40 who would just love to be a 20-year-old again and go off adventuring instead of staying home, doing laundry, picking up after the kids.
Well, I think we've seen that before. We've seen that with Harry Potter and things. It was read by, more adults probably read it. Well, no, more children than adults, but adults certainly read it. But with the Maddie Hatter thing, is there anything of you in this character that you created?
Well, I would almost say she is me as I would like to be. She's adventurous, she's daring, she works on figuring things out and finding ways to get where she's going. The parts of me that are in there are, well, I have a theatrical background. I wrote for children's theater for a number of years. I ran a children's theater for a number of years. And one of my degrees is in theater. And I love playing dress up. So Maddie gets to dress up and go undercover to find out some of her little bits of information that she's going to need to solve this mystery, track down this missing baron, and maybe find the diamond. And that part of it is me. I am perfectly content to get all dressed up to see if this costume would really work.
Now, what about the other characters in there? Some of the villains and what else? Are they based on people you know, or are they composites of people you know, or are they just completely invented?
They're a little from column A and a little from column B. Now, the Calgary area has a very active steampunk community. A lot of them are personal friends of mine. And when I was plotting out some of the trickier bits of murderous business, if you will, that are in this book, I called up a bunch of my friends and said, get dressed up like this character, and I gave them the character sketch, and come to this pub on this afternoon so I can take pictures of you, for example, trying to beat up someone or threatening someone with a weapon or trying to hide behind a piece of furniture. And all my friends showed up beautifully dressed with all their fancy steampunk gear, let me take masses of pictures of them, and those pictures hung on my office walls all over the place, inspiring me the whole time I was writing. So yes, I was very fortunate that they were willing to play the characters that came out of my head. Now that said, some of the characters are flat out send-ups of well-known figures in the mystery community.
Right, so there is no inspiration from outside. Now, you mentioned, of course, you're part, obviously, of the steampunk community in Calgary and everything, but you're also part of the writing community, of course. I don't know if you're renowned, but people know of you and everything. You're in the writing community. Is that an important thing, you think, for writers? Should they be part of their local writing scene?
I think writing is a very lonely profession. And if you are not part of your local writing scene, you're making it a lot harder for yourself. That's the bottom line. The other line is, how long does a person really want to spend recreating a wheel? I've been in the writing community for 25 years. I was on the board of the Crime Writers of Canada for a few years. I was a board member for Mystery Writers, Inc. for a long time. And I'm a founding member of Calgary Crime Writers. I've talked to, over the years, of an awful lot of starting crime writers who think they have a brilliant original idea, but because they've never talked to anyone about it, they don't realize that 8 books using that same basic idea have come out in the last 2 years by much more famous authors than them, and their idea that seems so new and fresh is almost at the stale end of its market unless they can bring something really new to the table. So you can waste an awful lot of time and effort pursuing an idea that seems good to you that either isn't fleshed out well enough or is retreading ground that's been covered by somebody who's got much more pull than you. And those are the downsides of not belonging to a community, but the upsides of belonging to a writer's community are you get to hear about great authors that are coming to town. You get to take classes, you get to learn from other writers' mistakes and speed up your learning curve tremendously. You can skip over whole sections of the newbie manuscript problem after you've sat through 3 or 4 critique sessions of other people's new manuscripts. So I'm a firm believer that all writers should have a community.
So would that be like one of your main tips then for aspiring writers, is to seek out other writers and see what you can learn from them and steal from them and find out what not to do from them?
My number 1 tip would be read in the genre that you're writing in. And my number 2 tip would be don't assume that because a best-selling 20-book author in your genre can get away with something in a book, that you will be able to. You, as a newbie breaking in, especially now, have to write a book that is head and shoulders better than something that a well-established author can get away from, and that's just to get you noticed by agents and publishers.
Now, your book, of course, is published by Maddie Hatter, anyway, is Tyche Books in Calgary. Now, did you consider self-publishing it at all at any stage, or were you always going to look for a publisher for it, large or small?
Well, I'm primarily a mystery writer, and I've had 6 full-length mystery manuscripts rejected by a great many publishers now. And some of those I did consider self-publishing, but honestly, I'm not interested in doing that kind of work. I like writing much more than I like publicity or sales or marketing or handling inventory or fooling around with my Amazon profile numbers. So when I had the opportunity to write a steampunk novella, I knew Margaret from Tyche Books because the Steampunks partner with Tyche Books every year at When Words Collide, the great Calgary Writers Conference in August, with a joint Tyche Books steampunk party. And Margaret and I were kicking around this idea for a year or two, and I finally said, let me do a game, a steampunk game for the party this year. It'll be all text-based, text and pictures. People can solve it or not during the party if they have a few minutes, and we can put up some prizes. And she said, sure. So we did that. And afterwards, she said, if you wanted to write this, I would publish this. And I said, can I get back to you on that? Because I really didn't think I was going to write this. And at the time, I was shepherding a manuscript to the Debut Dagger in London, England. I was a finalist for the Debut Dagger, and I had great hopes at that time that one of the agents that I met at the Debut Dagger would want to publish my death-defying art history thriller. And for a variety of reasons, that didn't happen. And then I was at leisure again, and I said to Margaret, if you're still interested, I would be happy to write you this lively little story about this lively little woman chasing around after a deadly diamond. And she said,
the rest is history. Oh, it's historical, I suppose. The rest is history. Yeah. You mentioned there, I think, competitions and awards and things like that. Is that something that's important for writers, you think, to be not just to be aware of, but to sort of enter books for? Is that worthwhile?
Well, one of the biggest problems that a lot of beginning writers have is finishing things. And if you know there's a contest deadline coming up for example, unpublished crime authors can send in their manuscript or their opening chapter or something to a competition by this date and maybe get some recognition out of that. That's often the spur that they need to make them finish. And so I think just as a mechanism for making you finish things, contests are important. If you get shortlisted for a contest, that is very important to put on your query letters to agents and editors. And if heaven smiles on you and you win something, then suddenly agents and editors will come and look at you and talk to you. You don't have to always go to them hat in hand. You get to meet a lot of people when you get to be the finalist in a major national competition for any kind of award.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think it's the same thing as we said before about the marketing and things and promotion. It is a form of that, really. I mean, some people don't realize that they have to do book signings and other things just to get their name out there. But things like you mentioned, like When Words Collide, it gets you known. And even awards, I mean, it's like if people say, well, I don't enter for awards because I never win. It's like saying I never buy a lottery ticket because I never win. It's a bit short-sighted. And if you have if there's a book on the shelf that's got a little shield on it that says winner of the ABC Book Award, then you're going to pay more attention to that than the one next to it, perhaps, that doesn't have the little sticker on it. So I think it's certainly worthwhile. But Maddie Hatter, I'm sure, will probably be in line for all these awards, right, in the next year.
Yes, Maddie Hatter is currently submitted for the young adult category of the Arthur Ellis Awards, which is Canada's Crime Writing Award. And the Crime Writing Awards are named for Canada's official hangman had a nom du travail, a work name, that was different from the real name of anyone who actually held the job. And they called him Arthur Ellis. I have no idea where they picked that name out of a hat, but the Arthur Ellis Awards are named after Canada's official hangman back when we had official hangmen. And Maddie is up for that award. She's up for the Sunburst Award for children's literature, and Alberta Book Award, and I'm pretty sure I'm missing a couple. But then there's the Aurora Awards, which are a different category of awards. All the ones I've mentioned so far are juried awards, and a lot of new writers are not aware that there's a distinction between a juried award and a fan award. And fan awards are typically associated with writers' conferences. All the books in a particular genre will be nominated or that are eligible for an award in a given year will be gone through, and someone will make a selection, or they'll have a publicly available set of criteria by which they'll narrow down the list of all the books published in a certain category to the top 5 or 10 or 20, and then they'll send out ballots to everybody who's signed up for that conference and say, which one do you like best and what's your second choice? So that's a fan-based award. A jury-based award is judged by people in the profession. So a jury-based award is getting you read by agents, editors, publishers, representatives. So that also is a very good way to get noticed. And the Arthur Ellis Awards this year are doing something they haven't done before. The publisher that sponsors the Unhanged Arthur, the one for unpublished mystery writers, is going to read all the manuscripts on the shortlist, not just the winners this year. And that's the first time ever. So if you can get a manuscript into the top 5 in Canada, then you come to the attention of, you know, a lot of very important people in the publishing industry and can really kickstart your career. But yes, Maddie is up for a number of awards this year, and I think in the end of May to the beginning of June, 5 of them are going to announce within 2 weeks of each other. So I'm going to be at home, glued to my email, waiting to see if I've won anything for Maddie.
Well, certainly worthwhile doing, I think. So, well, we wish you all the best of luck with those, and of course with the book as well, and everything. It's been great having you on here today. I think everyone should be interested in Maddie Hatter. I certainly am, and we wish you all the best with the book, and all the best with all these awards and things that are coming up in the next little while. So, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Simon. Good night.